Not too far away from the Tallapoosa Museum of West Georgia history is what remains of an old Hungarian colony. And as the story goes, Tallapoosa was marketed heavily towards people from the north. It became a Yankee town under southern skies, a gold boom town, shortly after the Creek Indians had been removed. In fact, there's an old meeting place for the Creek in town called Seven Chestnuts. Well, a man by the name of Ralph Spencer led 50 and then 200 Hungarian families to this region. And with Father Janishek, they decided, because the soil was perfect for growing grapes, to, in the late 1800s, set up a community for Hungarians. And their plan was to, start this grape growing operation, and then they would be kind of the epicenter for alcohol production in the region. And because their soil was such high quality, they gained immediate fame and respect for doing this. But it was started in the late 1800s, and in 1907, Georgia was one of the first states to make alcohol illegal. And in part, it was because of anti-German sentiment. I mean, of course, these folks were Hungarians, and they named their communities Budapest and Tokaj, but when they heard names like Janishek, they pretty much immediately assumed that they were Germans. And especially in West Georgia, near towns like Drakesville, there was a lot of anti-alcohol sentiment, and it got wrapped up in Ku Klux Klan ideology. There was actually a shootout at Drakestown called the Drakestown Tragedy. And this cemetery has recently been cleaned and revitalized, but you can see a lot of unknown graves. A lot of these folks would have been born in the 1860s. And for years after, they tried to get this community to take off again. They tried growing different crops, but the soil was only suited for grapes. They tried keeping their church up to date, but it burned down in the 1970s. They, tried keeping their wooden houses together, but those were just out in the woods, and now that they've been abandoned, they rotted away to nothing. And all that's really left of Budapest is this cemetery. At least as a part of an Eagle Scout project, someone has come by and cleaned the graves. And it does seem like a lot of people stayed in the local area because they were here in 3 different winemaking communities, but after that they would kind of just branch out into other areas of local work if they could find it. And this is actually one of the displays at the Tallapoosa Museum on Little Hungary. Little trace left of immigrants who tended vines at Harrelson. And there's a couple of old newspaper articles about, for example, the abandoned church still yields big still. They discovered them making illegal moonshine in the area years afterwards. There's some articles here about Priest Janishek's house. He was the priest of the community and also kind of supervised wine production. And it's now called Keys Castle. I'll have to come back here sometime and see that. And very sad how this entire community of people was basically forced out in 1907.
Alright, we're here at the West Georgia Museum of Tallapoosa, located in, you guessed it, Tallapoosa, Georgia. And I like it because it's kind of made up of, I'd call them mini museums. You have, John, if you could pan the camera over there, you can see there's one for like the drugstore and the telephone office and the post office. But over here we have one about moonshine and whiskey stills. And this is an actual still that was confiscated by the sheriff. Now, stills and bootlegging it was actually profitable, and it went from about the 40s to the 60s. And then price of sugar went up, enforcement went up, so it kind of just died down. I'm sure there's still a couple stills in operation today, but it's nowhere what it used to be. This still was actually found inside a chicken coop, and this one over here was found, it said 1 gallon whiskey still use in the home. So that's interesting. And then if you look over to the left, you got the blacksmith shop. And again, I'm sure there's still blacksmithing going on, but the demand for it probably isn't anywhere near what it was.